to go, Sam?
Go for it.
All right. Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm pleased to be here with Jason Nixon, Alberta's Minister of Assisted Living and Social Services, and Matt Jones, Minister of Hospital and Surgical Health Services. Dr. Saya Zelke, who is Executive Chair of Assisted Living Alberta, could not be here with us today, but she's done tremendous work in helping us with the announcement we're making today. We're here to talk about one of the largest problems in our healthcare system, and one that has tied up immense resources and the action our government is taking to address the problem. When Albertans go to the hospital, they expect timely, high-quality care, but for too long, that hasn't been the case. Emergency rooms are overcrowded, and frustration and long waits have become, sadly, a way of life. That has never been acceptable, and it's not something our government is willing to tolerate any longer. As we began untangling the system, the scale of the problem became clear. Nearly 1 in 5 hospital beds in Alberta was being occupied by someone who no longer needed acute care. 1 out of every 5 beds taken by patients who should have been able to receive the care they needed within the community. The repercussions of that are significant. We have all been in that vulnerable moment, scared for ourselves or for someone that we love, sitting for hours in an emergency room waiting to be seen. And that's not fair to you, and it's not fair to the Albertans who were left to languish in hospital beds when they could have been cared for in their homes and in their communities. When we started tackling this issue this past summer, the system didn't even have a clear picture of what was happening. Data was fragmented. There was no accurate count of continuing care capacity, and you can't fix what you can't measure. But now, thanks to the hard work of Ministers Jason Nixon, Matt Jones, and Assisted Living Alberta, that is changing. We now have consistent, reliable data, and we made a clear decision to start with the most complex cases, because if you can solve the hardest problems, you can fix the system for everyone. One example is the Royal Alexandra Hospital in Edmonton. It had one of the most overcrowded emergency departments in the province, driven in large part by the number of non-acute patients occupying hospital beds, more than 3 times the provincial average. Some of these cases were people who needed acute care for only a day or two, but remained in hospital for literally years afterwards. In fact, in Edmonton, there were 7 patients who spent a combined total of 6,570 days in hospital after they were medically ready for discharge. That's 18 years in total. That is unacceptable. It wasn't fair for those patients, and it wasn't fair to Albertans. If those beds had been available, more than 1,000 Albertans could have received acute care sooner, and our parents and grandparents and friends and children would get the help they need when they needed it most. Today, every one of those patients is receiving the care they need in the assisted living sector, in the right setting for them. And those beds, well, they're back in circulation. It's clear that the work is paying off. By focusing on the hardest cases, we've already reduced the number of non-acute patients in hospital by 20% across the province. And that's real progress, and it's only the beginning. Today, we are taking the next major step forward by introducing Alberta's Assisted Living Framework. This framework tackles the issue of non-acute patients in hospitals head-on, strengthening the province's healthcare system to ensure Albertans can receive the treatment that they need within their own homes and their communities, rather than always relying on hospitals. It is built on 4 pillars. Support aging in place, expanding home care and non-medical supports to help Albertans age well in their homes and their communities. Number 2, connect patients to the right care, strengthening pathways out of hospital and into community care for non-acute patients through improved diversion and discharge planning. Number 3, modernize funding and foster innovation, aligning funding to prioritize patient outcomes and ensure dollars follow patients, not beds. And finally, number 4, build for the future, building assisted living capacity to meet the needs of Alberta today and into the future. And today, we're backing that last pillar with action through the largest continuing care expansion in the province's history. Alberta's government will invest billions of dollars over the next decade to build tens of thousands of continuing care spaces right across the province. And we're standing by, making $400 million in commitment today, so we can get shovels in the ground tomorrow. This investment isn't just about numbers, it's about making sure Albertans can get the care they need when and where they need it. I'll now turn it over to Jason Nixon, our Minister of Assisted Living and Social Services, to go over the framework in more detail.
Well, thank you, Premier, and good afternoon, everybody. We are here today for what will be the largest capital investment announcement in continuing care in the history of the province. But before I get into those details, which I will in just a minute, I'd like to talk a little bit about what the Premier just laid out. One of the greatest challenges that existed in the former healthcare system was thousands of Albertans being placed in the wrong beds, which means in the wrong care, resulting in them not receiving the care they needed, and causing other Albertans to see long wait times in the ER, not be able to get acute care beds, and to face long surgical wait times. Since we stood up Assisted Living Alberta just this past September, my ministry and the whole team at Assisted Living Alberta have been focused on this very challenge. The challenge of making sure that the right patient is receiving the right care, and working to make sure that Alberta's continuing and community care services are delivered effectively and consistently throughout our province. We're doing that because we know something had to change. For too long, underneath Alberta Health Services, Alberta's healthcare system was built around hospitals and for hospitals alone. Everything in that broken system pushed people towards acute care, and very little helped people before they got there, or after they were already ready to leave. This left gaps, significant gaps, in home care, in assisted living, and in community supports. And Albertans felt these gaps in places like the emergency room. And with Albertans' population growing, aging, and experiencing more and more complex health needs, these gaps cannot be left to fester any longer. Albertans deserve better. They deserve to get the care they need, when and where they need it. And in order to make that a reality, we need to take a holistic approach, which is why we created the Assisted Living Alberta ministry and have built the entire ministry around Assisted Living Alberta that is focused on the critical pillars of our healthcare system. Our mandate is to create an assisted living system that actually works for people, not just on paper, but delivers real results in the appropriate care setting while not impacting our colleagues' ability to provide critical acute care for those who need it. One of the key pillars of my colleague Minister Jones' acute care plan is working on getting faster, more timely care in the right spot. The work that we do at Assisted Living is absolutely critical for that success, which is why, since operational day one of Assisted Living Alberta in September, we have been working to build a comprehensive system that connects the dots between home care, community services, continuing care services, as well as both medical and social services, all with the goal of getting everyone to the right spot, to the right services at the right time. To do that, we have developed our Assisted Living framework. The framework has 4 key pillars. The first is supporting aging in place, helping Albertans age in their homes and their communities by expanding home care, caregiver assistance, and non-medical supports. This means making home care more flexible and responsive on evenings and weekends, strengthening support for those who play the critical role of providing kinship care to their loved ones at home. And it means investing in the everyday supports that make a difference: meal programs, housekeeping, rides to appointments, and programs that keep people socially connected. Through Budget 2025 alone, we're investing $1.7 billion to help Albertans age with dignity in their own homes and their communities, because when people have the right support early, they're less likely to end up in emergency rooms. The second pillar is connecting patients to the right care. We are doing this by strengthening pathways out of the hospital and into community or facility care, so people can receive the non-acute care they need in their homes or in appropriate assisted living facilities in their community. We're creating dedicated teams in hospitals responsible for connecting folks who no longer need acute care to the right supports. And we're improving navigation in the emergency department, especially in high traffic ERs, so people can be connected directly to community supports instead of defaulting to admission to acute care. The third pillar is modernizing funding and fostering innovation, which means making sure that taxpayer dollars are going towards people, not to paperwork, by having funding follow the patient and be tied to patient outcomes. And we're developing an assisted living navigation portal so Albertans can see the continuing care offered in our province, compare their options, and make informed choices for their families and loved ones. And finally, our fourth pillar, building for the future, because none of this works without capacity. Currently, we have about 30,000 provincially funded continuing care spaces in Alberta. Since 2019, UCP governments have invested more than $750 million to develop more than 3,000 additional spaces. And today, our government is announcing the largest continuing care expansion in Alberta's history. We will be committing billions of dollars over the next 10 years and building tens of thousands of new continuing care spaces across the province. We know that we must invest significantly to keep up with population growth and the fast-aging population to be able to provide appropriate continuing care for Albertans and not to overburden our hospitals. We know we need 12 to 15,000 new spaces added in the next 10 years alone, and we are committed to building all of those spaces and ensuring these facilities are well-staffed. And today is another big step in that process. Today, I'm announcing that immediately we will be investing $400 million to build an additional 1,500 continuing care spaces in our province. This is in addition to the 1,400 new spaces that are already under construction in Alberta and the 800 spaces that were offline that are being renovated as we speak in order to be brought back online to care for Albertans. That means increasing capacity by 3,700 spaces alone with this announcement. We will follow up with similar investments in the coming fiscal years to keep us in line with our growth needs and to make sure our province is never in the place of Alberta Health Services inadequate planning in that situation that was created in the old process. We'll also be taking lessons that we have learned from housing, fast-tracking shovel-ready projects, using practical designs that let facilities adapt as needs change, and most importantly, making better use of already existing public buildings and the land that we already own. We are done patching around the edges of Alberta's healthcare system. We are focused on the root problem, increasing capacity, better coordination, and developing a system that is built around people. Building an assisted living system that is easier to navigate, faster to respond, and focused on real outcomes for Albertans. A system that will work in tandem with the other health ministries to ensure Albertans can receive the right care at the right time in the right place. In the coming weeks and months, we will continue to see significant capacity building announcements across all the pillars, helping us move towards our goal of having the best assisted living system in the country. And most importantly, the goal of making sure that our parents and our grandparents are receiving the care they need in appropriate facilities while alleviating pressure in acute care so that Albertans will see faster times in the ER and get the care they need when they need it. And with that, I think, Premier, we will be happy to take some questions.
Thank you, Premier Minister. We'll head into our QA. We'll be taking one question, one follow-up. We'll start off here in the room before making our way to the phones. And just a reminder to state your name and outlet before asking questions. Hands in the room. We'll go to Morgan, Connor, and then Will.
First question for the Premier, Morgan Black, Global News. Premier, you are now facing recall petition along with two of your cabinet ministers. In the statement for you, the woman talked about that she feels you don't have meaningful history, and then also that you are not listening to what your constituents want. What is your response to that?
Well, I can tell you that Brooks Medicine Hat, they used to call themselves the Forgotten Corner, and they're not forgotten anymore. There are many, many projects that have moved forward in the last number of years that had not moved forward for many years before. Infrastructure projects like the JBS Highway, Highway 873 Connection Road, new and modernized schools that we have being built in Brooks, health facility upgrades in Brooks and Medicine Hat, and I continue to do quarterly town halls. I've got actually another town hall happening this weekend, so I'm looking forward to getting feedback, and we'll continue the strong advocacy I've been giving to Brooks Medicine Hat.
And then follow-up is, are you concerned, I think there's 20 or 21, I know there's an NDP member facing one as well, but are you concerned about the amount that is being thrown at your government right now and what that indicates with support?
Well, what it indicates is that the process is being abused. All you need to do is have $500, hire a CFO, and write a 100-word reason why you are launching a petition, and you can launch a petition. So we've been watching this, thinking that this is not how it was intended when it was first come in. It's certainly not the way it is. It has been used in practice in British Columbia, where they've had the law for some time. They only had, I think, 30 petitions in the last 30 years. So we're watching it with interest. But I can tell you, I support every single one of my MLAs, and I know that they are doing great work in their ridings.
And Connor, go ahead.
Connor Hawk, CTV News. If the system is being abused, do you then are you considering changing the legislation?
Well, we had an opportunity to, and we didn't. So we're watching it with great interest to see if there's any changes that need to be made, and we'll continue to watch it.
You know, are you considering changing it within the next legislative session?
As I said, we are watching it with great interest to see if the rules are being followed. There's some indications that they're not being followed, and we'll have to make a determination once we see how they play out.
Thanks, Connor. We'll go to Will.
Premier, over the weekend, Jeff Rath made a comment in an interview saying that constituency association presidents are calling him and saying they're, I think he said, hopping mad over the changes in Bill 14 that amend the process for elections for candidates, where the validation of it. And he said that those constituency presidents, if there's not changes made to Bill 14, would consider calling a leadership review. What would you say to that, or have you heard from these constituencies?
Well, we have a very robust process for determining candidates in our party. It involves having a local candidate nominating committee that vets candidates and can also reject candidates. And then it goes to a provincial nominating committee that can also vet candidates and reject candidates. Then there's an open nomination process that goes for a couple of weeks. And then there's a period of time where you have to sell memberships, and 21 days shy of that is when the membership cutoff takes place, and then there's an open vote that occurs. And at that point, it has been a staff member of the Central Party that has signed off on it. And so there's no change to the process other than making me, as the head of the party and the head of the caucus, be the one who signs the papers at the final step. So there's been no change to our nomination process and candidate selection process in our party. They're just, I think he's mistaken.
And then my follow-up to that is, in his statement last night, he said, quote, "Everyone needs to stop clutching their pearls. I'm not trying to remove Danielle Smith as the UCP leader. Her advisors are doing a fine job of that without any assistance from me." What would you say to that critique of your advisors?
You know what? I got a 91.5% leadership review vote when I had a leadership review last year. We just had another historic number of people come out to our AGMs. So we've got some of the biggest AGMs and the most active members. I do regular town halls with our party members. I do also regular meetings with our riding presidents. I feel pretty confident in my position.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Will. And we'll go to Cindy. Hopefully we'll get an on-talk question sooner or later.
After this one. Hi, Premier. Cindy Tran with the Edmonton Journal. I understand that you said that your government is following the recall process quite intensely, but I am wondering, is your government prepared for next steps if some of these petitions are successful and it moves to a by-election?
You know, I guess we'll see. There's all we've seen so far is there's been a number of people who've paid $500 and hired a CFO and started a campaign. I guess we'll watch and see if any of them are successful.
And to Minister Nixon, on the topic of the announcement. So I was told that this move, to move patients into the proper beds, this had started as a pilot at the Royal Alexandra Hospital. So when it says here that your government has reduced the number of hospital beds occupied by non-acute patients by 20% in the past 6 months, is that just at the Royal Alex, or is that across Alberta?
So the pilot you're referring to at the Royal Alex is work that we're doing to support Minister Jones and his team on acute care capacity, on emergency room capacity issues, which has some overlap for sure with this issue. And we have now started to expand that to other emergency rooms across the province, which I can talk about if you would like. But to answer your question on the work specifically on alternate level of care patients that are in the wrong spaces in Minister Jones's hospitals, that work has been taking place since about June across the province. There has been a lot of focus in the early days on Edmonton because Edmonton was operating with about double that number of Calgary, which is something that the Premier and I and the Minister have been focused on. But we are adopting the practices that I've referred to all across Alberta. And that 20% number is referring to all of Alberta.
Thank you. We're going to head to the phones now. Operator, would you be able to put through our first caller, please?
Darren Rathwell from 660 News. Your line is open.
Hi there. Thanks for taking my question. Question for Premier Smith. I know you touched upon it as to town hall meetings and as part of your response to the recall campaign launched against you. In regards to that, now I've only been able to find 2 such meetings in Medicine Hat in your riding this past year. One of them, the Alberta Next panel, which of course was not an open forum per se, but set towards specific topics. Can you confirm that's the case?
Well, I do 2 events in Medicine Hat, 2 in Brooks, and the one this weekend's in Bassano. I also do several events with the Chambers of Commerce. I do several events with various municipalities groups. We've got a variety of things that we do in the riding. That's just good practice in my view, and so I'll continue doing that.
Okay. Do you plan on escalating that in your riding in the future?
No, well, you know, I'm always having meetings with constituents, meeting with stakeholders, announcements, meetings with municipalities, town halls. I'll continue doing as I have for the past 3 years that I've represented the riding.
Thank you. Operator, could you put through our next question, please?
Dan Singleton from Great West Media, your line is open.
Oh, hi, this is for Minister Nixon. I'm wondering if you can say how many of these new in-use care bed spaces are being provided in rural communities. Do you have an idea of the number on that?
Dan, I knew as soon as I heard your name you were going to ask that, and I'm happy to see a Sundry reporter with an on-topic question. Do appreciate that. We are the work that we've already done on units is taking place all across the province. Of course, you know, in the town of Sundry, there's a brand new lodge that has just been built recently. That is going to eventually need to be expanded, given the numbers that we see in the Sundry area. As we roll through this process over the next couple months, the department and Assisted Living Alberta will come out early in the new year with a more detailed breakdown of a long-term 10-year capital plan that actually indicates which communities are going to need which units over the next several years. We remain very, very focused on Calgary and Edmonton at the moment because the quicker that we stabilize that, the quicker that we can put other resources into communities like ours, Dan. But I do want to stress that investment is already taking place. In my constituency alone, there's been something like 3 new lodges built in the last 4 years or so.
Okay. Follow up?
Yeah, of course. Sorry, I did Sam's job.
Unrelated, Eastern Slopes petition for mining, coal mining, just came out yesterday. You have any thoughts on that petition?
Look, one of the challenges back in our home, Dan, is that people continue to indicate that coal mines are going to end up on top of very, very sensitive places that we care about. Sadly, that's what's been sold for many, many years. What I would point out to you is that it's never happened. There is no application on those places. There has not been anything built in those locations. And, you know, we've heard that, unfortunately, from individuals for the last almost 7-8 years. And so I think that indicates to you, it certainly indicates to me, that what the government has said is that there is not going to be coal mines on places like Crescent Falls. It can't happen. It's illegal. It's against environmental regulations. It will never, ever be allowed to take place. Unfortunately, I think, Dan, you're going to continue to hear people implying that and creating fear for our community. But again, I will refer to the fact that they've been saying that for years, and not even one mine has been applied for in those areas. It remains illegal. The reason nothing's been applied for in those areas is because you can't build a mine in those locations. It would never make it through the regulatory process.
Awesome. Thank you. We have time for a couple more questions. Operator, could you put through our next caller, please?
Rick Bell from Post Media, your line is open.
Good afternoon, folks. Premier, what do you think is really going on here? I mean, there was just a short while ago, there was no recall. Nobody was getting recalled. There was no campaign. There was no fancy website where you could find out information about recall. And now all of a sudden, one MLA, 2, 3, 4, 10, 15, and on we go, including yourself now. What do you think is really going on? Is this just a spontaneous dissatisfaction with your government, just coincidentally happening in all of these different constituencies? Or do you think there's something more organized afoot?
Well, you have to look at the ways in which the left have weaponized various democratic processes. I think we've seen it over the last year with the longest ballot. We never saw that before either. People putting 200 names on a ballot with the same CFO and the same signatures applying, and many of them not even getting a single vote, so they didn't even vote for themselves. That's part of the reason why we knew that we had to make some changes, because there's I think a new group of folks who are trying to undermine the democratic process and are abusing the process. And not just me saying so. It was Jean-Pierre Kingsley, who is the chief electoral officer federally. So I think that this weaponization of recall is very much along the same lines. It's very easy to take out a petition. All you have to do is pay $500 and write a paragraph and get a CFO, and you can launch a campaign. And so we'll watch and see if the rules are being followed, and we'll have a better understanding if there's any tightening up of those rules that need to be made in the future. But I think that this is sadly undermining confidence in our democratic processes and our democratic system. I think the fact that it operated pretty much under the same rules in British Columbia, and the only one that was successful in getting enough signatures was against an individual who was writing letters to the editor praising himself and criticizing his opponents, and that created so much outrage. People had signed a petition to remove him, and he ended up resigning as a result. So I think when you look at it, where it has been in place, whether in British Columbia or in American states, it's been for wrongdoing, genuine wrongdoing, and we're just this is just a political difference of opinion. And the way you solve those is at the ballot box. And so I'll watch and see, but I think I'm hearing a lot of frustration from Albertans that they're making a mockery of what should be a very important mechanism to address elected officials who genuinely aren't doing their job or who have misbehaved in a certain way. And that doesn't apply to any of my MLAs. They're doing great work.
The supplementary is, there was talk immediately after the teacher strike. There was talk about toppling the government. That's not my quote. That's an actual quote. Because if these MLAs actually got recalled, or a substantial number of them did, you would lose your majority in the legislature. So, how seriously are you taking these recalls? I mean, do you actually believe that could happen, that you could see several of your MLAs actually recalled and have to face by-elections and have, 10 empty seats or 15 empty seats in the legislature for a period of time?
Well, I can tell you what I'm seeing. What I'm seeing is that people are pretty happy with the work that we're doing, especially with the Alberta-Ottawa Accord, which I believe has over 75% approval across the country. We're seeing that finally we have consensus to build pipelines. We're seeing companies like Capital Power announce major new investment in natural gas power, which we haven't seen for years, saying it's because we no longer have the net zero power regs hanging over our heads. You're hearing energy companies talking about expanding their pipelines in every direction. We're addressing issues that people care about, whether it's protecting law-abiding gun owners or protecting kids and parents and those who want to participate in sports. So when I go out and talk with people, is they're grateful for the work that we're doing. And you will always have those who disagree with you on a political point of view from some of the policies. But I would say that the majority of Albertans appear to be with us, and I'm delighted to see that, and we'll watch with great interest how these petitions play out.
Thanks, Rick. And we have time for one more question. Operator, could you put through our next caller, please?
Emma Zhao from CBC Edmonton. Your line is open.
My question would be for Premier Smith, just about Bill 12, specifically the transition from H to ADAP. We've heard from a lot of recipients and advocates about concerns around some significant clawbacks around their current benefits. I was wondering if you could tell me what the government has done to address some of these concerns and how it plans to address concerns going forward.
Well, I think it's unfortunate that the NDP continues to fearmonger for our most vulnerable citizens. We're very distressed by that. No one who is severely handicapped needs to fear that they will get paid any less tomorrow than they are today. In fact, they're going to see an increase. We are one of the few provinces that not only have a relatively high level of per month support, but we also increase it. So starting in January, it's going from a total of $1,901 to $1,940. What has happened is that the federal government is now cost sharing on that amount for us, and they're challenging the other jurisdictions to come up to a level of $1,814 per month, and we encourage other provinces to do so. We want to make sure that there's some consistency across all. The second part is that those who are able to work, and not everyone can, but some can, we want them to be able to earn more money before losing their benefits. And so we're still, with a lot of consultation with the community, figuring out what that will look like, but it's somewhere around $45,000 to $50,000 that we want people to be able to earn if they're able. And we're hearing a lot of support in the disabilities community because many, many individuals who are not necessarily able to support themselves completely do want to be able to work more hours so that they can participate in the job market. And then finally, we also know that there are some who are able to earn a full market wage, but they need to have support on their pharmacare plan. So that's the other part, is that we have created 3 different streams now to support people where they're at. And some people will just need pharmacare. Some people will determine how much they want to work in the private market and get additional support so that they're not left out. And then some will have to receive 100% of their payment through a combination of AISH and the federal disability benefit. And so we think that that's creating a lot more opportunity for those who are vulnerable and those who need support. And we do encourage other provinces to come up to the level that we have here, because we're about $500 higher than our next closest neighbors. Did you want to add to that, Minister?
The only thing I would add to that, the Premier is very right about the misimpressions being made by some about what would take place with AISH. AISH is still here. It's the law. It's a statutory program, which means it's the law. And it continues to have the same payment structure that it had before this legislative session, will continue to for years to come. By adding the Alberta Disability Assistance Program, this province is the only province that is actually expanding disability supports to thousands of Albertans that would not be eligible to receive supports in this province or any other province. A lot of the conversation is really focused on AISH, Alberta's Income for the Severely Handicapped, for obvious reasons. Very important that we maintain and continue to care for people that have been on the AISH program and need that AISH program. But what we have expanded here in Alberta is giving access now to many people who would not have been eligible for AISH. There is a whole generation now coming up that's going to be able to access appropriate disability supports, not be forced not to work, receive appropriate health benefits. Even at ADAP rates, when you're still allowed to make income, you will still be amongst the highest provinces on disability supports, period. And so that, to me, is part of the story that needs to be told. This is groundbreaking and really going to have a significant impact on many Albertans who could not have had access to disability supports before the government made this change.
And did you go ahead with your follow-up?
Oh, I don't have a follow-up.
Perfect. Then that'll conclude today's press conference. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.